me, Zainab Badawi, coming to you from the BBC's Radio Theatre here at Broadcasting House in London. We have a specially invited audience of 100 inspiring women from all over the world. And our special guest today on Hard Talk is one of the world's best-known female politicians, former EU Commissioner and now Italy's Foreign Minister, Emma Bonino. For many years, she has been a bold and outspoken activist for numerous causes, all with the same aim of trying to fight injustice, discrimination, poverty, disease and hunger. But when she looks around her native Italy, does she feel that the progressives like her have lost the fight against sexism and racism? Foreign Minister Emma Bonino, welcome to Hard Talk.
Buongiorno, thank you.
Italy is one of the most advanced nations on earth, so why is it such a tough place to be a woman?
Because of tradition, because of a conservative political environment, because we are also a vastly Catholic church in the conservative approach, let's say. So for many, many reasons, but still there are a lot of improvements and things. If I look backward 40 years ago when I was a young girl, I cannot even recognize my country. So there is hope and room for improving.
Glad to hear that there is some improvement.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned those factors, but what about the Berlusconi factor?
Well, you know, I'm not so much concerned about the private life of President Berlusconi. What is a bigger concern to me is the pervasive female stereotyping, which has become so entrenched in Italian society through media, private or public media.
And Silvio Berlusconi owns a great portion of the media in Italy.
Private, but also public. So that is what concerns me really very much.
Yeah, but you see, you say, yes, of course, there have been improvements. So if you look at the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Survey for 2013, Italy ranked 71. Much, much lower than other comparable EU nations.
Which is true.
Italy is more sexist than comparable EU countries.
More traditional, I would say, more traditional. And on top of that, you know, that applies in politics and in many other sectors. And just because we are here, how many president or director general female in BBC have you seen?
Yeah, but the gender gap survey, Emma Bonino, it looks at access for women to health, education, not just politics, and careers generally. And it really does rank very, very dismally. But you talk about the fact that the media has really contributed in Italy to the sexual objectification of women.
Yeah.
I tell you, at a women's summit in New York, which you attended in 2011, the Italian actress Violanti Placido said that we don't have female role models to which we can aspire. The winning model is that of a young woman who is available to be corrupted, to go to parties and be next to powerful men. And the next day, she's on the cover of all the magazines, she gets interviewed on TV, she gets a fashion campaign, and she becomes a star.
No, that is the stereotyping, I was talking about, which is giving a terrible message to young girls and men, by the way, as if being a woman can also only comply to this model. That has been my fight, and luckily I am not alone. There is really a move in Italy that wants to overcome this stereotype, and I'm happy to say that since then things have been really changing, particularly in the state TV, who is portraying a different kind of women, not another model. I don't want model. Women are all different.
But you know, a lot of people wonder, and I don't want to go on too much about Silvio Berlusconi at all, but a lot of people wonder whether somebody like him and the kind of comments he made could have been re-elected 5 times in any other European country, Prime Minister for 7 years. Let me just remind you of the kind of things that he said at a summit in September 2010. He said, one reason for investing in Italy is because in Italy we have beautiful secretaries, superb girls. In April 2011, he said, when asked if they would like to have sex with me, 30% of women said yes, and the other 70% said, what, again?
But the question is... But
I mean, that's the Prime Minister saying that.
This is Prime Minister, but the other question is, that is so entrenched in the sort of a machist culture in my country that he has been elected. So we have two things to fight. It's not only one person, but it's a culture that comes a long way. Nevertheless...
So you accept that another major European country, industrialised nation like Italy, it wouldn't have happened that a Prime Minister in power at the time would make comments like that?
Difficult to say. But in any case, also, contrary to this, this is also the country that, thanks to, for instance, my party and others, got the law on divorce back in the 70s. Legalized abortion back in the 70s. So
you were instrumental in both of those.
Yes,
You've been a very outspoken person for that.
Which means that there is room, I mean, for changing things. And in democracy, sometimes you go forward and yet sometimes you go backward. But you have to care for value. You have to nurture what you really want. So it's not an easy task, nowhere in the world.
I mean, for instance, in 2001 and also 2009, you were so cross about the lack of political space that the radicals like you were getting in Italy. You went on hunger strike.
Well,
yeah?
Yes.
And you say women are fighting against this in Italy now, but belatedly, it was only last year in March that you had 100,000 women in Italy go on a protest march and say, enough of all this sexism. But that's a bit late in the day, isn't it?
Maybe it's late, but it's coming back. So I prefer to see the positive side of it. So if I look backward, I see a period of great innovation, the 70s and the 80s. Then I see a period of a sort of everybody sleeping in some way. Even the feminist movement went a little bit more quiet. Now we are back, and I think that is very important. And I prefer to see the positive side. So all my energy is to push forward.
All right, the positive side. So in February this year, we had general elections in Italy. Centre-left from the Democratic Party, Enrico Letta, becomes Prime Minister. But he leads this grand coalition from both the centre-right and the centre-left.
Because nobody won.
OK, yeah. And as you said, things have got better. So women in Parliament went up from 20% in Italy to 30%. 7 out of the 21 cabinet ministers are now women.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, it's getting better, but from a fairly low base.
Yes, sure. But that's why, because if you went so far ahead, I would spend less energy on this kind of issues. So,
all right, so things are going in the right direction.
Yes.
But it's still a tough place for a woman to be in power, isn't it? Lara Boldrini, the Speaker of the lower chamber in Parliament.
Is there a place where there is an easy life for women in power? If you can know it and name it for me, because I, frankly speaking...
But Minister...
No.
Yeah, but Minister Lara Boldrini gets threats, images of her being raped, her throat being slit. Name me another European country where you have a major political figure getting that kind of threat.
But we have also a brave woman minister, which is Cecilia Kyenge, who gets insulted every day and reacts back.
Okay,
she is, frankly, making a major change in my country.
You mentioned Cecilia Kyenge, who was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is a doctor, was made Minister of Integration, first black cabinet minister in Italy. But look what's happened to her. She goes to public meetings, she has bananas thrown at her. You have, in April this year, the Italian MEP Mario Borghezio saying Kyenge wants to impose her tribal traditions from the Congo. She seems like a great housekeeper, but not a government minister. Let me tell you another one. August 2013, Roberto Caldarelli, Vice President of Italy's Senate, addressing an outdoor rally for the Northern League Party. I love animals, but when I see pictures of Kyenge, I cannot but think of the features of an orangutan, even if I'm not saying she's one.
But the reaction has been overwhelming. So what I'm saying...
that is appalling. That
what is
kind
appalling?
Of comment is used. I mean, he apologised.
Yeah,
what happened
he
to
did.
Him? What happened to him?
Nothing. Nothing. But the reaction has been overwhelming. So Cecilia is paying a very tough price to make the culture of my country change. And I really want to thank her for the courage and because she's brave. So, but she is making my country change in the perspective. And so
Is she really making your country change in its perspective?
Yes.
Because I put it to you that if any politician made such comments, orangutan, for instance, housekeeper, it would be the end of his or her career.
Let's hope it will be. Let's hope it will be.
It would have happened by now. Do you accept that Italy may be more tolerant of that kind of racist
it doesn't
comment?
happen. Maybe it doesn't happen with women, but I've seen other politicians, unfortunately, attacking the Roma community in a very insulting way. So what I'm saying is that bad behavior has to bring a more vocal reaction. And this is what is happening, and I see it as an encouragement to go forward.
So what happened when? What happened in the press when these comments were made? You say she's changing Italy. What happened?
Well, because in the press and in public opinion, there was really a sort of fantastic reaction that these things are intolerable. And I do prefer to have problems in the public, and I do prefer to have public confrontation instead of a sort of a quietness in which nobody dares to stand for it. At the end of it, I strongly believe that, as in many other countries, particularly in the Mediterranean, we have a long way to go. The LGBT is still an issue, like in many countries. But let's not think that nothing will come for free.
OK, when you're talking about like that, you know, that people should be more tolerant of immigrants and different people of different race, but really when you look at opinion polls, 60 to 80% of Italian people are opposed to immigration. You're swimming against the tide, Emma Bonino.
Well, that is everywhere in Europe, unfortunately, and that is one of the reasons that when we talk of southern borders of Europe, not only of Italy, of course, nobody wants to be so forthcoming in burden sharing. So I'm afraid that the racism and populism is taking root all over Europe, and that is what worries me, because if it is only one country, the other one can help. But I'm afraid it's taking root also in other countries, which is the final end of the project of Europe, what I thought it was Europe.
You say that, but, you know, the German Interior Minister, Hans-Peter Friedrich, has rejected this idea that Italy, in particular, has a problem. And he says Germany has 946 refugees per 1 million of population. Italy has 260. Your population in Italy is about, what, 60 million? So,
well, it depends.
And Germany about 80 million. So you're not overburdened.
No, but I'm not talking that kind of burden. I'm talking of common responsibility of the southern border of Europe. But the question is they land, of course, in Lampedusa or whatever. But what is happening in the southern Mediterranean with poverty, turmoil, makes a problem that is for everybody.
But we get this idea now, you know, we hear Mayor Nicolini in Lampedusa saying, please give us help. The Italians say, please give us help. And I just give you that figure to show that
but I know
Italy in particular, with refugees is not particularly overburdened,
But it's not the question of refugees. The question we are mostly underlining is the question of people who die at sea. We had the tragedy of Lampedusa, but we had also 400 operations of rescue and search, which were positive. So we are also good and 400 operations of search and rescue at sea in the Mediterranean, and then a tragedy happened. But what I think that what is happening in South Mediterranean, Africa, millions of people on the move, it's not a problem that can be tackled by Italy alone, less by Malta.
I'll ask you about that issue in a moment. But just to finish this point, which, as you say, a different one about immigration in Italy. Italy, in particular, of EU countries, or Western countries, actually, has an ageing population. Lowest birth rate in the EU, 1.2%. 1.2 children on average per family. You need something like 250,000 immigrants every year for the next 10 years in order to fill your skill shortages. So politicians like you should be making the economic case.
But this is clear for everybody.
But you're not in Italy.
No, but that is clear. The economic case and motivation is clear to everybody. We have 5 million immigrants, legal immigrants in my country, who are, by the way, with a lot of success story. 5 million legal immigrants. So that's not the point. The point is emotion, is feeling, is sensation. Is a country that has been a country of a huge emigration, which is not at all used in immigration that happened in one generation. So I think it's a problem for Europe, for Italy and for Europe, that we must tackle, and I must say there is no miracle solution nowhere.
No miracle solution. Let me say to you, because of course we're talking about the Lampedusa boat tragedy when earlier in October hundreds of African migrants lost their lives in the Mediterranean, which of course was hit the headlines as it would. But it's provoked a response from European leaders about what you do. And Bernard Kouchner, former French foreign minister, also co-founder of Médecins Sans Frontières, has been writing in October saying we have to reinforce Frontex, that's the European Border Agency, with money, resources, and a one country, one one-boat mission so that all 28 EU countries participate in the rescue plan, and asylum seekers are allocated to all EU nations, not just those bordering the Mediterranean. You agree with that, but do you see any real appetite for that happening?
Well, what I do see, particularly in the summit in these days, and my Prime Minister is putting very strongly, is that the southern border is a common responsibility. Frontex, whatever, for rescue must be strengthened, which is not the case yet. So waiting for Europe, we have done our job. We have decided an initiative which is called Mare Nostrum, putting all the navy we have at disposal to rescue people. But again, there is not a coherent policy in Europe as far as immigration and asylum. It's not a common policy. Every country wants to do his own national policy. And I think this is simply not effective. So I hope that the tragedy will not be forgotten in a nutshell.
Do you think it will? I mean, you've now been given by the EU $40 million extra to help you deal with the influx of migrants. I mean, do you think Lampedusa was a game changer?
Well, I hope, and I'm working for that, because today, you know, you can, there are short memories, and there are new tragedies coming. If you just move to Syria, for instance, we will see 1 million refugees. So we are working to make that the tragedy is not forgotten and pave the way for a new and more sensible policy. It will not be easy. There is no miracle solution nowhere in the world. I've never seen immigration solved easily, nowhere, not even in the States or whatever. But we have to tackle the issue. To say one thing, Zainab, this phenomenon is here to stay with us. African and southern border of Mediterranean are in political and economic turmoil. People will move looking for a better life. So we have better sit down and rationally try to, step by step, be more performant, which is not yet the case. There are still people who say, well, they just to stay in their home, and that's simply not going to work.
We hear what you say. We see the gesture by your Prime Minister, Enrico Letta, saying, let's declare a day of national mourning for these people who died at sea. We see the EU Commission. We see the EU Commission President José Manuel Barroso visiting Lampedusa with Mr. Letta, and yet we contrast that with the reality on the ground, the fact that you have these overcrowded migrant centres in Lampedusa. We look at Italy's very tough anti-immigration laws set up in 2002, whereby the mere act of an Italian citizen helping an irregular migrant criminalises that action. Well, criminalises the person if they give them shelter, if they give them work.
But that is not what is really... The conflict is there because according to the treaty, when people... They ask for asylum, they have to stay where they ask for asylum. So they have to stay in Lampedusa or nearby. So that is another limitation that is difficult to overcome. And on top of that, the people coming to Italy want to see Italy as a transit country. They want to go to Germany or to France, where they have their groups, their relatives, and etc. So it's a really tough issue to... But again, it's not only this spot, because we have more or less 7 million people on the move just on the southern border. They are going to Bulgaria now, that is calling for help. And they, of course, during winter, maybe they will not take at sea. They will go by land through Turkey or everywhere. And that is, needs a long time policy, let alone that the zero problem doesn't exist. Okay, but we have to accept the fact that this mobility of people for poverty and etc. is a phenomenon that is here to stay with us.
All right. I mean, Bernard Kouchner, speaking generally this week, has been saying how the EU countries now both lack imagination and generosity when it comes to them dealing with issues of migration and so on, but also losing that vision. Do you think that the European Union really has lost its edge? I mean, just one simple example, your country, Italy, giving very little in aid, failing dismally to meet its commitments to international aid set up by the UN.
Yeah, I think that the economic crisis has a lot to do with the people becoming introverted and more provincial and trying to defend what they have and being very scared of any new things.
And it's made the EU a declining power on the world stage?
Well, because we are not a common power. We are 28 member states yet when we talk to foreign policy. So we act not always in a very coherent way and cohesive way. But the economic crisis definitely has a lot to do with it, and people become very scared. They think that if they close their border, they will be safe, which is a wrong appreciation. It doesn't work like that. But emotionally, this is what is happening.
Do you think that the EU essentially can only be a force on the global stage if it allies itself with the United States?
I would like Europe, first of all, to ally itself among the 28 member states. That would already be a miracle and already be a great success. Then we can discuss with the Americans or with others, particularly with the Americans, who are a traditional ally. But the major challenge is to find an agreement and a coherent policy among 28 we are.
All right, but will there be any coherence, do you think, at the EU when it comes to these spying allegations? As you know, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel has, many observers say, really reacted in a very angry way, very rare for her, when there were allegations that the National Security Agency, the NSA of the United States, had been tapping her personal mobile phone. And she said, friends don't spy on each other. And she says, you know, you've got to build trust amongst one another. Newspaper allegations in The Guardian in the UK say that 35 world leaders were included in this kind of
I think that the reaction...
was Italy, to your knowledge, one of these countries?
To the knowledge of our services is not, but that doesn't make us different. Simply,
you're going to be asking the Americans whether you are on that list?
Already. We had a bilateral with Undersecretary of State Kerry Wednesday, and we asked him, and they acknowledged that they have a problem and they had to solve the problem.
What did he say to you? He says...
He just said, yes, it is a problem. President Obama is determined to find a solution to this problem. And I think...
What did he say the nature of the problem was to you?
No, he didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask either the nature. But what was important yesterday is that 28 head of states meeting yesterday, all together with one voice, asked and reacted and asked explanation.
Sure, because President Hollande of France also, they were angry about these allegations, and Germany, they say they now want a meeting with the Americans to work out a new cooperation. There was no division
among the 28, so that's proof that it's possible from time to time.
Were you shocked by these revelations that, of course, came from the whistleblower Edward Snowden?
Well, I'm not exactly shocked, maybe surprised. I think that in history, friends spies each other.
I want to ask you very quickly on Syria, because you are one of the friends of Syria and your country's been involved in that. There seems to be a consensus towards a political solution. But what happens to Assad, briefly, Bashar al-Assad? Exile? Impunity from the ICC?
Well, I think that is why... first of all, let me tell you... Briefly. But first, I'm really happy that now the political solution has become the mainstream after a period of military, whatever, intervention, and Italy has been consistent in calling for a political process.
But impunity for Bashar al-Assad?
Let's see. The reason why you make a conference is that you don't prejudge the conference at the beginning. Otherwise, it's useless that you make a peace conference. That normally takes time, Kosovo and others. That's why today the most important thing is to bring the two to the table. Okay. And one of the most challenging things is that the Syrian opposition is not yet, let's say, at that point to sitting at the table.
Very quickly, bringing it back to women, Italy has never had a female prime minister. When might we see one?
Oh, well, that's not the issue. The issue is another one.
20 seconds.
Would women really go on walking, standing, asking, pretending? That is the real issue.
Foreign Minister Emma Bonino, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk.
Thank you.
If you stay sitting...